Well, that's never something you want to do to your own tow rig. This is my 2002 Ford Ranger. This is what I use to tow everything in the world. It's a 4-wheel drive, 110 wheelbase. It's got the good 6-cylinder, 4-liter truck, XLT. It's the best one you can get. It's so good that I bought another one. This one's got 363,000 miles on it. I think I've already done the rear axles once, 150, 180,000 miles ago, the bearings and stuff. And I was towing a rig. I towed this guy, actually, this Honda CR-V has a clutch issue. I was towing it down the interstate and started smoking. My brakes started acting up, so I thought I blew a rear brake cylinder. I took the wheel apart, and there's nothing wrong with the cylinder, but I knew that before I had the wheel all fully apart because I'll show you. Yeah, those aren't supposed to do that. Bearing went out. So, if I remember right, I replaced these axles because the bearing was harder to get, or was like $20 less than the axle with the bearing on it. So I don't know, it's so long ago it's hard to remember. Anyway, we're going to drain the rear, pull the clip out, get this axle out, get a measurement on the length because there's 2 different lengths, and then order the part, throw it in and fix it. It's pretty straightforward. You know, first step, jack up your car. Second step, pull the wheel off. Disassemble the brake pad area, the brakes, which I put in a separate bin over here. All the parts, I'm just kind of putting in there. That was a clean bin. Brake dust is nasty. Now I'm draining this guy so I can get to the clip, because inside there's a clip. You pull it out, and then this axle just slides out. It's got the bearing attached. Can't remember if the axle slides out or if I got to take the retaining plate off, but I'll let you know when I get there. Anyway, and then we'll put her back together. Alright, so in case you haven't messed with the 8.8 before, you have to get, there's a clip. You can't see it. I'll show it to you in a minute. There's a clip right there you have to get out. To get that out, you have to push the axle in this way. Now there's a 1 bolt that holds this center. You can see it sliding now. Holds that in, and it's a 5/16 or an 8mm. Make sure you use a 6-sided socket because they're usually tight, and they are Loctited. And it just goes right here. If you can't see it, rotate your rear end, it'll be there. And then I would just use it. I put it in there to pull out because this is super slippery because it's a rear end part. Anyway, there's that. And let me set that down, and I'll push the axle in, and we'll check it out in a second. Well, funnily enough, you can see the C-clip is right here. Messy. I hate the smell of rear end grease when it's not in a race car. Anyway, you can see it went right there in that slot. Axle just slides in and out, and I almost got my finger. Now it'll fall out, but you just push the axle in from the wheel side, and that's that C-clip, which is usually like, you can see this one right here. Let's see if I can rotate that guy. You can see, I think you can see it right in there. So you can see that right in there it ends. Anyway, super easy. Once you open it up, you'll see. Clip falls out, hopefully. It did for me. Sometimes stuff doesn't work that easy, but and now you should be able to just pull the axle out. Sometimes carnage is really cool. You can see in there, that's pieces of bearings. I was on the interstate hauling a trailer, and I couldn't just stop, so I had to keep going. It was smoking a little, but I got over when I could, and you can see it does not take long. It's just carnage. You can see the heat on this guy. I hope you can. Sorry. You can see the discoloration. It got super hot. I'm lucky it didn't catch fire. The axle's messed up because the bearing surface, which is right here, is completely just thrashed. So we'll get the seal out, see about getting the bearing out. Is that good? Yeah, I need a real light. You see about bending the bearing out, and I'll clean up all the metal. I'll look to make sure we got no metal in the bottom in here as best we can. Like I said, this thing's got 363 or 4,000 miles on it, so I might pull that other axle since I got it apart and inspect the bearing over there. When I say I might, I mean I will. And we might have to replace both, but we'll see. Alright, so these bearings are still intact. They're pretty well worn. They're very loose in there. It looks like my seal might be leaking. So I'm going to go ahead and replace the bearings on both sides and the seals on both sides. And if I look right here, you can see there's a distinct ring there, right here. And I can feel the where the bearing was. I'm going to say probably should replace both the axles. Might be overkill on such an old vehicle, but I use this guy for towing. So I'm going to check prices and make a decision. Alright, see if we can get this bearing out. It's operable, but it's not great shape. We're replacing an axle. So we're going to go ahead and get it out of there. Let's see here. I'll at least try to. El Trasho, in case you speak Spanish. Then what I'm going to do is use it's a slide hammer. A typical slide hammer doodle. I'm literally going to go put on some safety glasses. Because those pieces just flew by my head when they popped off, which is crazy. Well, fiddlesticks. Alright, so it's unfortunate, but I had to take a die grinder and cut a groove in there. I'm going to try and use a cold chisel to snap it. This works in the opposite direction when the bearing's on the outside. It's not going to want to expand when the bearing's on the inside, so I might have to do some more grinding to make that snap. They're very brittle, so that, as you've seen with the chipping and stuff, as we were doing others, trying to use the puller. But we'll see if we can get it out of there. Alright, so you can see it's starting to bust loose. I just ground till I almost went through, trying really hard not to hit the inside bearing surface. And then I used the slide hammer here, put it on one side of it, and it actually snapped. You can see that. Probably get it out of there now with the, I wanted to show you. Yeah, well, I'm going to have to hit it one more time, so I'll show you, and then we'll get it out of there and clean it up and see how bad we did. Let's see here. There we go. Well, you can see there's pieces missing, but that's only because they broke out. I don't think I ground through. Oh, I did grind through. I'll be damned. Well, it was a strong one. Well, I'll clean this out. right in there. I did grind through. I was trying really hard not to, but it's hard to see sometimes. It won't affect it. The bearing will still seat in the rest of it. It's just an outer bearing race, sorry. So I'll show you what I'm concerned about. So, you can see in there where I actually hit the bearing race. Right there. It's minor, but you know, sometimes things happen. I'm trying my best just not to do that, but I failed. Anyway, the other bearing will fit in there nicely. I'll smooth that out so that the edges aren't rough, so it slides in there. We'll put them in the freezer so they'll be smaller, and tap them in, seat them in there, and then should be good to go. Alright, so there's that. We are going to head off to AutoZone with our parts. And here's the one from the other side, and it was, you can see the wear. But it just popped out. Some of it broke off, but it popped out all in one piece. I didn't have to grind on it, which is funny because this is the bad one. So, and then there's the seal. Take those down to the parts house, make sure I get the right ones, and axles, and we can put her back together after we do a little cleanup. Alright, hey guys. So I realized that swapping out some bearings and some seals and an axle, you know, there's not a whole lot of technical stuff here. If you take it apart and you're mechanically inclined, you can usually figure out how to put it back together. So figured I'd incorporate some normal shop stuff that you may or may not think about when you're doing stuff like this. For instance, you're never going to get this guy perfectly clean in here. There's always going to be stuff, unless you take it out, and you don't want to do that, because then you got to set it all up for pinion depth. I'm sorry, not pinion depth, but mesh. This thing's got 300 something thousand, 64,000 miles on it. It's not going to get no better. So a little bit of bearing material in there isn't going to hurt it. But you want your surfaces to be nice and clean, and these imperfections won't matter because you're going to put a bead of goo on there. I haven't yet, but I'm going to run my tap down these holes to get all the silicone out from before. And when you use a bunch of cleaner, you get rags that are soaked like this, and you're just cleaning up stuff. You can kind of see some of the shiny stuff in there, but you're like, okay, I got my pumpkin clean, I got my shafts clean, you know, but I got this rag with cleaner all over it. That stuff's expensive. So I do stuff like wipe the floor down, you know, you can see the clean spot and the dirty spot, just wiped it down. I wipe down my counters, you know, they've got cleaner on it, so it cleans. Might as well use it. I wipe down my transmission jack just to get it a little bit cleaner than it was. You know, get the most out of that cleaner that you can. Another pointer I had is, first thing I did when I unloaded all my parts from the parts store is I took the bearings out, and they're tolerance fit, so they're snug. You can pound them in with a hammer, and you know, hopefully you don't mess anything up. But the first thing I did is put them in the freezer, because why not use a little bit of science to help you out? The freezer's going to make them smaller. The housing's going to remain the same or get bigger, at least compared when I have the heater on in here. Bring it up to about 68 degrees. The freezer's going to have those guys at, you know, 16 degrees. Tolerances will be a lot less, and you'll be able to get, tolerances will be bigger. You'll be able to get your stuff pressed in or hammer fit or whatever you want to call it easier. Another thing that I do, well, you can see getting it clean. It's not really important for this to be super clean because it's going to get dirty again. But your surfaces you want clean, and you want to use the razor blade corner to get as much of that silicone out there and off from the outside. I missed a little spot right there, but it's all right. Got most of it. Another thing I do when I have a project like this is going to take bearings and seals and axles and you know, gear oil, just a lot of different stuff. And I also ran into it during my inspection. I ran into a tie rod in that was loose, so I got that. I just went online. I use AutoZone a lot. They're really close, that's why. And I built a cart with all the parts in it. I didn't buy them online. I went down to the store. But I took this down to the store. It's a list of what I need, a reminder, and also sometimes they have trouble finding stuff because they use different words. These are wheel bearings, but I searched for them as axle bearings. Online they came up. In the store they did not. So they had to look. I had to look them up by myself under wheel bearings. So that's another thing. Another cool little trick. You notice I have a couple cans of the AutoZone brand. If you look at the bottom there, it says 14 ounces. If I get that, 14 ounces for $3. Well, this is $6, but it's 1 pound 3 ounces. That's 19 ounces. When I did the addition, that was cheaper. It was 30.5 cents an ounce, and this was whatever it was more. They also put it on the label at the store. I learned that from my wife at the grocery store. If you're buying something like, you know, apple juice or something, it has the cost per fluid ounce on it. And you can buy stuff by brand, or you can buy stuff by price, or you can buy a balance between the two. I want a good brand, but is it worth it, kind of thing. Another thing I do at the shop, just to help me with my old and memory, is I do lists like this, what I need. That helps me remember from here to where I build my list. And when I'm doing different cars, which I'm doing, I don't know, 4 different cars right now, I keep lists there. So it all comes in handy. And the last and probably the most important thing is I use this heater in here because I don't have a heater. It works good. It's just a little noisy. I don't have an electric heater in here. It's super insulated. I should probably get one soon. But when you clean the floor off and when you clean all this stuff off, it makes massive amounts of fumes. And in an enclosed environment, you notice I have my door open even though it's relatively cold outside today. In a closed environment, man, you're really killing some brain cells, and not everybody has a lot to spare, especially me. So when I get finished cleaning and I get everything wiped up and put out, you notice I put my wet rags outside. These are the rags I use to clean with the cleaner. It's got massive amounts of cleaning on them, and then they gas off. They make a really potent smell. And when you spread it over a large area, like the floor, same thing. Cabinet top, same thing. So really do your little bit of safety. Open up your garage door, let it gas out. Shut your heater off for a few minutes, it won't hurt nothing. Once everything inside is warm, it warms up a lot faster. Anyway, you can see we got all our parts here. I'm going to start looking at those things, checking the fit and placement. I think we're going to have to press in some lug nuts, and I'll pick up in a minute. Alright, well, we got it all cleaned up. There's still some minor things there, but nothing that's going to catch or worry me. Got my bearings in the freezer. The axles look relatively clean. It's kind of hard to see in there, but you can kind of see. Yep. Anyway, back here, that's as clean as that's going to get. I'll wipe it out one more time, just get that loose stuff off. This guy is same old, same old. Axle housing's really relatively clean. Hard to see. And then I also hit the edges. Got them all cleaned up. Alright, got our new axles out. Compared them, make sure they're the right lengths, counted the splines, did all that silliness. The axles came with this cool stuff. They actually came with a bearing and a seal, studs, and lug nuts. So, there's that. That's pretty cool. I'm trying to decide whether I want to put the studs in before I install the axle or not. But it doesn't matter because I'm going to put the bearings and the seals in first no matter what. So that's my next step, bearings and seals.